Gotcha. Oh. Hey, what's going on? Podcast Nation, it is Jason Harris here, and thank you for joining me on another episode of the Golden Wrench Podcast, where I get to talk to, well, anybody and everybody I want to talk to when it comes to the fixed op side of the business. Now, today I was planning on recording with this individual, but as per usual with this amazing person, he's like, let's go live. And I'm, well, okay, yeah, absolutely. Why not? Let's go live. But I have a hell of a guest for you guys today. I have the one, the only, the oh so famous Brian Kramer with me. Brian, what's going on, man? How you doing?
I'm just having a blast being on the show with you.
Yeah,
I love that we're going live. Hopefully, we figure out what we want to talk about.
We'll figure it. This was not planned whatsoever, by the way. So this was just like, hey, why record it? Let's just throw it out there and go live. See if we can actually get anybody to jump on and watch this thing. So, you're awesome. Thank you for even challenging me to do out of the box content. So, dude, hey, you know how I like to start off these podcasts, Brian. I love kicking these off with a little origin story for like the 7 people out there that don't know who you are. Let's kick this off with how you got started in this crazy little world we call the automotive industry.
So I started off as a lot porter at an Oldsmobile store, sold cars, and worked my way up throughout the the dealership world, and was a GM for almost 20 years of multiple dealerships in different states. And then I was I was in automotive, all in retail for 27 years. And I've spent the last 3 years as the EVP, general manager of AccuTrade at cars.com.
I think I've heard of that little company, right? They're out there.
We're picking up the momentum. 28 million unique visitors.
That's it,
a month.
Right? That's it. Just 28 million. You guys are getting there. Don't worry, you'll get there. I'm just kidding.
20,000 dealers.
Just a few, right? Just a few. Well, Brian, man, I'm really glad that you were able to take the time on your day off of all days to jam with me, man, and I really appreciate it. We got some cool topics that we want to jam today. We are definitely going to be throwing out some 3-letter acronyms, possibly some 4-letter words, but hey, this is the automotive industry, so it is to be expected. So our first topic, man, you want to kind of kick this thing off with the parallels of managing ROs and CITs. And for everybody out there, I will let you define each one of these for maybe with a handful of people out there that don't know which 3-letter acronym or 4-letter word we're throwing at them. But I'll let you kick us off, man. Give me your thoughts and opinions on this.
So in honor of the Golden Wrench podcast, and along my career, what I found is that most people, that start off in variable ops, like I did, don't get exposed to service, and really either they're not curious or the service teams don't really want the GMs to be involved in fixed ops. They got it on lockdown. They know how to execute. They get their stuff done. So there typically is a knowledge gap between the two. So what I'm going to try to do today is to talk about a lot of the things. I know a lot of ways not to do things, but a few of the things that I learned along the way is that there's actually a lot of similarities between fixed and variable.
100%.
And I'll give you one great example. So on the fixed operations side, you've got ROs, which are repair orders, which is no differently than a sales menu.
Yep.
Or an F&I menu. Then you've also got CITs in the finance department. The key with both of them is to manage those dollars, make sure that you're closing those things out. You don't want them to go, longer than 1 to 3 days. Mm-hmm. And the best dealers that I see around the country are relentless, no differently than with lead handling on inbound, BDC leads. 3 times a day, contacting, each lead, call, text, email. Same thing with the due diligence of making sure that you're getting everything closed out. And it's a symphony between parts and making sure that the parts are getting hung by the technicians, and you get the right technician assigned to the right job. I mean, it's really a tough job. It's one of the fastest moving, grueling, intense, jobs that there are out there. Similar to an F&I manager, you got to sell. You've also got to be good at your paperwork. Hopefully you are. They have 2 different people doing that. But when you look at CITs and, work in process, those two things are very, very similar. And I think a lot of dealers think that, service has nothing to do with sales. And there's other parallels, parts
Well,
inventory, buckets, inventory for used car buckets. It's all relative.
Well, you know what? That a lot has to do with, I think, the way that maybe our businesses are structured on a P&L. Where we put them into silos, so that from an accounting perspective. But I feel like we have a tendency of putting them into silos even outside of an accounting perspective, right? I mean, how often, how it's like, even though the parts department, the service department is pretty darn connected to them, even though it's maybe only a wall, I feel like sometimes, it's like Morse code back and forth to, in their communication. And, even worse sometimes in the sales department and back out to the service department, right? It's just like they're out there with flags trying to tell
Well, Morse
people,
code is a pretty good analogy with some of
right?
the tools that where you're communicating back into the shop with.
Well, and that's the thing. So it's like I know that, either intentionally or unintentionally we create these silos. But this is where I wanted to go with this, because I want to kind of get your thoughts and opinions of kind of how we break that down. I know we look at everything from a kind of a people, process, and a technology perspective, but these silos do have to be broken down to effectively just get shit done faster, right?
Well, so it's interesting that you asked that question, because that was the last project I worked on when I was in retail before I left.
There you go. Of
And I was obsessed with that because we had gone digital. We were, paperless on the sales side, but we were not on the service side.
course.
And as I started breaking it down step by step, piece by piece, you got to start with the inbound lead, just like you do in sales, right? So how is that lead coming in? Do you have a mobile number? Do you have a VIN number? What's the single source of truth? And
Mhm.
I will say that for the service department, it's more convenient to go out there and get the VIN number and run everything off a VIN scan on your service write-up tool. But for the consumer, it's easier to use the cell phone number as the single source of truth for everything. So that's how dealers should build that in terms of looking everything up by mobile number. Because if you're just looking at the VIN number, it could be in the spouse's name versus the other, one spouse's name. You're not rolling appointments. So it's like the equivalent of getting 7 duplicate leads from a credit app, from a vehicle selection, another one for the appraisal tool, another one from the 2 or 3 other appraisal tools on a website, which should only be one. But the same thing happens on the other side when people are scheduling appointments. The let's say the wife schedules the appointment, the husband brings the vehicle in, or vice versa. They look it up, they write it up in that person's name. The text messages are going to the spouse that set the appointment instead of the
Not
one
drop
that's
the car
there.
up. Yep.
And
Yep.
it's all unnecessary friction due to tech stack, lack of API integrations, that every dealer, if they take the time and slow down, they got the right staff and the right aptitude, can
Mhm.
fix that. And that's really where the process breaks down. And I think that's where all the friction is. It's why an oil change in some stores takes an hour or two.
Well, and that's where we're kind of drawing the parallels between this, because we've seen the same thing happen in the F&I department with the CITs, right? It's like when something goes wrong with either an RO or a CIT, it's usually a breakdown in communication somewhere. And the reason, and I think what causes that communication breakdown is usually either the lack of a process or not following a process. Here's something that I have found recently. I want to see if you see the same. I hate to say it, I'm kind of dumbfounded by the lack of documentation around processes. Yet we know that, we might have a problem with getting our CITs through the finish line, and we may have a problem with ROs getting stuck at a certain point, but we'll sit there and accept it and not just sit there and just document a process. Brian, I know you're out there. You see the good, bad, and the ugly, and I'm not just talking about the movie. But what are you seeing, man?
I'd say that that's an epidemic on a lot of levels. Now, I was obsessive, maybe too much, on documenting all that stuff and had a process for everything, because I didn't. One of my biggest pet peeves is people saying they didn't know.
Exactly.
Because for me, it's either a knowing issue or doing issue. So if it's a knowing issue, it's on me. If it's a doing issue, it's on you.
You got it.
And I would let that happen once. I'm not going to let it happen twice. So when there was something new that happened, we would document it. And each one of those processes was the living, breathing thing that would if somebody said, well, I don't think that's the right way to do it. Okay, well, then you write one better. That's the best I could come up with, short order. Write it better. And if yours is better, which eventually the team was then taught and empowered to write all their own, or at least to improve on whatever the base of it is. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be something in writing, so that,
Mhm.
because most of the time nobody's going to read it anyway. They're just going to use it as an excuse to prevent things from getting done. But I'll tell everybody on the call this: it's not just fixed ops, it's not just sales, but we're already in a world, and we're not entering it, where Chat GPT is going to overtake Bing. Google Gemini has already dominated traditional Google search. So as AI-based search becomes superior to SEM and SEO, what AI-based search looks for is different than what SEO looks for. SEO is looking for questions to be answered and
Exactly.
FAQs and things.
Yep.
Right. But AI looks for the process. It looks for step 1, 2, 3, 4. So like when somebody's coming into the dealership, on the service detail page, upon your arrival, here's what you can expect. Pull up, somebody will greet you, and this and this and this. Here's our value commitment, right? Same thing in the sales department. Make sure you bring this documentation. If you want to get in and out in less than an hour, you need to have your driver's license. You need to upload these docs. You need to already have this appraisal completed. You need to have the credit app completed. Same thing with the service department, but AI-based search is looking for education. And if you don't have processes in place, not just to hold your people accountable, just so there's clarity, there's a quote: when expectations are clear, decisions become easy. And that goes for everybody's staff.
I love the fact that you've kind of put that correlation together because, and again, actually just one quick message on that topic is like, look, because of those tools, I actually don't think you have an excuse not to document a process. I mean, Brian, I think, me and you have been creating playbooks and documenting processes for many, many years. If we only had a tool like this to help us, holy crap. Can you imagine? Like, I mean, I can go in there and just literally type it out. And I mean, yeah, I'm going to make some adjustments, but it'll give me the bones and structures within 15 seconds. But you know what's funny? I've actually find myself, Brian, actually utilizing that kind of process driven search now even more than I do with the other one. Just recently, I was going to Atlanta with my family, and I was like, I need to know what Marriott properties allowed dogs, had an M Club lounge, and was closest to the Brave Stadium, right? Like search can't handle that many type of 1, 2, 3 type process functions, right? And sure enough, there it is. This hotel, this one. And these are the only ones that are close to. Oh, and then I had to go back. Oh, fuck, I forgot the pool. I need a pool too because I got the kids with me. Added that into it. Then it spit out the only 2, right? It was
2 years ago. My wife was freaking out. We gotta plan all this stuff to go to Switzerland, and just like always, we're in the automotive business. We don't have time to sit there and do all that research and the patience for it. At least most don't. So I typed it in. I said, I'm going there from this date to this date. I'm going to have 2 daughters, age this and this, with my wife. We want to do some outdoor stuff. Write out an itinerary for the whole 7 days. And we got there, checked in, and the concierge there at the Mandarin, he was like, hey, let me help you out with booking everything for you. And I said, well, this is what this thing said, and we already made reservations on a bunch of these different things. And he's reading, and he goes, what travel agency gave you this? I said, no, it's just Chat GPT. He's like, this is exactly what I would have recommended.
Isn't that awesome? I know we're going down a little bit of rabbit hole, but this is the way the world is working. And, if we're going to, ensure that ROs are not getting clogged up, and we're that are, similar to our CITs, not, getting to the finish line, and we're not creating these silos, then, we have to have these a documented process. And I just don't think there's any excuse anymore to not have a documented process. It just isn't. There's just no excuse. There are tools out there that just make it straight. Let's jump into our next topic because I love talking about this. Because I've actually been approaching this for a long time. So the similarity is going to ELR and hours per hour. Because I remember when I got into the business, right? Like I was measured on ELR. That's how I was measured. And boy, when I started looking at that and starting comparing that to my pay structure, boy, did I have a lot of questions to go along with that. Because how much control did I really have over that ELR? Anyways, I know you got some thoughts. Let me allow you to get on your soapbox, and then I'll jump on mine.
So I'll start off by saying that AI is going to, it's already happening, but enable service advisors, F&I managers to sell more product. It's going to allow and automate a lot of the CITs. It's going to allow, enable a lot of the auto billing. There's already, you and I both know software people that are building that stuff as we speak to do auto bill and to automatically, register all that stuff, pull it out of the DMS and register it on the OEM's website. So that is in the immediate or very near future. So when that happens, what's left to do? What's left to do is human interaction, greeting clients, delighting them, and selling more products.
Isn't that
And when
awesome?
you can make them feel better, they will buy more products. And when you can have more time to add value because you're not doing all the administrative stuff, you can talk to more people, cycle time goes up, all those things that happen. But I will say that when you compare ELR, effective labor rate, to uh, you know PVR and F&I, those are
Sure.
like the two. And then you've got hours per repair order, hours per RO is equivalent of products per deal in the finance department. So think of those two in the same way.
They're very
But
similar,
when
and I'd love to get your stance on it.
oil changes and breaks and maintenance items that are low margin could be comparable, that can become excuses or reasons why an ELR goes down,
Sure.
which is why it should be broken out separately. Just like cash should be broken out separately. Not to say you can't run $1,400 a copy on cash deals, but a lot of
Mhm.
people say, well, I just got all these cash deals, I can't make any money. And then they run $300 a copy on cash deals instead of trying to maximize all of them on their own standard and trying to
Yeah,
make two or
because
three thousand
the
dollars and actually
$300
sell the
for
products you should.
yeah.
But those are the correlations between the two. They're very, very similar. I don't think a lot of people see the parallels there.
Well, I think there's some similarities, but I also think, and I love because I am gonna go down the rabbit hole of pay structure because I don't get to always talk to people that have experience in this. And I still don't think today that to meet the objectives that we're having around building better customer experiences that are, we may have created the goal, but then we've maintained a pay structure that doesn't necessarily match that goal and objective. Do you know what I mean? There's
No, what
fight.
we've done
There's
is
a fight
we've
here.
created a pay structure that's very similar to sight unseen appraisals, street purchases, buying cars from
Mhm.
consumers like CarMax, where it's not it's not enticing enough for our associates. So what happened is, since ELR was a component and hours per RO, if you get somebody that's just coming for an oil change, there's no motivation to do that or to get people
Exactly.
to really incentivize them to come back. So what happened? Jiffy Lube, Valvoline, all these independent shops, that's why they have so much market share. And it's because of those pay plans, and because the pay plans don't incentivize that. That's not how Jiffy Lube and Valvoline pay plans work. It's completely different play with a
100%.
career path and everything like that. So to your point, the pay plans have achieved an objective, just not the objective long term that everybody wanted.
Well, it just hasn't caught up yet, right? It's like I think as an industry, we've caught up to the fact that yes, a better customer experience is going to ultimately give me better results. I mean, there's one number that still hasn't moved in the fixed op space that does stress me out a little bit, and it's the number of people that fall off servicing with us once the warranty expires, right? And I think, maybe it's a lack of education, maybe it's I don't know exactly, and I'd love to maybe kind of get your thoughts on this too, right? It's just like the OEMs are telling us, "Oh, you're doing great. You're amazing. You're in the top 10 in your region for da 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 da." But then you look at how, and it's still for most dealers out there, it's over 40 to 50, sometimes more, up to 60%, between 40 and 60% of people leaving the service department once that warranty expires. And it's like all of a sudden we're just getting slapped in the face with it. But I want to kind of get your thoughts on this and just like, is the OEMs kind of leading us down the wrong direction here? Is it? Anyways.
Well, it depends. It depends on the OEM, depends on the program, and I can tell you who's doing it right, and that's Southeast Toyota. And they've
Mm,
got Dealer Tire in there, and they've got, I mean, they have whole teams that are dedicated to this, to building out quick service and making sure the quarter time's being executed and all the things that go into that. And they would have massive amounts of data around this, because it's easy to sit there and just say that's the way it is everywhere, because it kind of is. But
mhm.
just because it is doesn't make it right. And when you focus on the time and accuracy of getting everything done, fixed right the first time, when you can get down to a 45-minute efficient oil change, people come back and the retention goes up. And like in their case, Toyota loyalty experience, which is, service retention, goes up, and you can see it go. I mean, there's a direct parallel to those two things. So the better you are at quick service, and a lot of people say, well, 60-minute oil change, that's a pipe dream. And It's not. It's just a matter of breaking it down. You can't keep sawing with a dull blade. You got to stop for a second, look around, and start sharpening it before you come back at it, because you can't keep on doing the same thing expecting a different result.
No, you're 100% right. And I think I like where we're going with this. It's kind of like step one. We have to be affordable, or at least competitively priced, right? Which I actually find most dealerships are. To be totally honest with you, I really do find that. And then there's the convenience of time. Yes, that is our next hurdle. We do have to commit that, because our competition is, for the most part, spreading that in our face. Like, hey, we can do it. And the funny thing is, not only are they pushing that into our face, but they're, look, we all know, the average Jiffy Lube, Mr. Lube, Quick Lube, whatever, is usually more expensive 20% than we are ourselves, right?
Oh, agreed.
And so then I think it kind of goes down into retention. And I don't know, like, I know some portion of retention comes from convenience, right? Because I know this myself, right? Like there's a coffee shop up the street that I go to. Is it the best coffee in town? No, right? Is it convenient because I literally pass by it while I'm dropping off the kids at school in the morning? Yes, right? So I think as an industry, we almost have to start looking at what goes beyond retention and goes into what we call advocacy, right? And
I'll
Brian, I
tell
know
you a few
you've
things
seen
because
this
I was
too.
obsessed with this at the end.
Yes, go for it.
It's the clients don't want to answer the same questions multiple times. When they get out of their car and you're greeting them, they don't want to tell the next person 2 feet away their name again. And then when they go over to get handed off to another person, the service advisor, because the valet is doing the walk around with them and taking the battery, tread depth and all that stuff. And then they got to introduce themselves again. And then they walk over, and then somebody else forgot their name again, or they had the wrong, or they can't look it up because it's in the spouse's name, like I was mentioned earlier. And I'm showing an appointment for you because the appointment was set up under a different, not, they could have seen it with the cell phone number or the household address or something.
100%.
And so it's not, and it's like not one of those things. It's when there's like 2, then 3, then 4, and then, okay, now you said it was going to be 60 minutes. It's been 90 minutes. Nobody updated me along the way. Kept informed, kept updated, either if somebody's in a loaner car, a rental car, a pickup drop off, or in the guest lounge, was by far the biggest issue. And at one point it was 68% of our phone call, inbound phone activity, was just people calling us to see if our a status update.
Yes.
And until we actually started using all the technology that was available, the technicians didn't want to do initially, and type the things in a certain format so it would automatically update the system, which would then update the customers directly, because they don't want to have to call into the service advisor every single time or go through the switchboard. They just want to know what's going on. We live in a world with DoorDash and Uber, and where we know where everything is at all times except for your car.
I got a question for you, because I think since with all the new technologies out there, including things like AI, but also some amazing machine learning, some systems that call themselves AI but are amazing machine learning. I don't know. That's a marketing question. That's a different topic. We can say that for a different podcast. We do that.
That is a good podcast.
It's a good podcast.
Repeatable programmable actions is what a lot of people call AI, but it's not AI.
It's amazing tech. I don't know why we're not just calling what it is. I mean, it's a really, really good tech, right? Just call it what it is. Anyways, knowing what you know now, Brian. All right, this is where I'm going to go with this. Knowing that you know now, all right, what would you have done differently in the fixed ops side of the business?
Well, I ran out of time in order to connect all the technology so that we would know who the customer was. We would know when they were coming in. I think there's a huge gap where customer sets an appointment 2 weeks out, or when they're done with their oil change. Hey, let me schedule it for 6 months from now. And then, by the way, your tires are yellow. They're going to be red by then. And the customer comes in 6 months from now, who gets a reminder text and all that stuff. And for whatever reason, there's a run on those tires. The fill rate is, they missed it, right?
Yep.
And they're like, well, how did you not know what tires are on? Or they call up to find out about the tires, and they said, well, what size is your wheel? Most people don't know that.
Sure.
They're like, do you have the Michelins or do you have the Dunlop? I don't know. I bought it there. Can you just tell me, is it in your system? Well, I can, but it would be a lot easier if you can just go out there and just tell me what it is, because it takes a long time to go through our system and all the things that I would hear on the telephone call. So I would clarify all that and find ways to empower the BDC or whoever's taking those appointments, and then leverage AI to be able to answer just basic questions that people have that you don't need to be tying up your phone system with. But I think more importantly than anything, I would be harnessing my first party audience data more on the
Mm,
service side. And we
okay.
were already, doing a decent job with shortfall lists, win backs, people that hadn't redeemed their Toyota Care, all that Toyota Guard stuff, and outreaching to them. But I think that leveraging that in a bigger way to be able to create more traffic into a service to sales used car acquisition program,
Mhm.
I would have driven a lot more traffic through the drive to acquire the cars through service
You know
digitally.
what it sounds like to me, and I know I actually just today's my podcast day, so I just got off like 5 other podcasts this morning, right? But like it was something that kind of comes up, in conversation, and I think we all know this in the industry. Little things make a big difference. And what I heard your list there, Brian, was just you've just listed out, not huge things. They weren't huge, but how these little things can make big differences. Have you seen some great examples of this kind of playing out in our industry right now where just dealers really just honing in on little things that just fundamentally make big differences in their business?
Yes, and I've seen a lot of it. People. I've seen a customer come in at 7 o'clock at night, and I've seen a check cut in less than 20 minutes
Whew.
for a $100,000 car.
Wow.
A customer who had an appointment, but none of that was prepared, and they've got the processes and the protocols in order to make that happen. I've seen uh, remote service up in St. Augustine at Bozard Ford with their 12 service vans, where they're servicing 10,000 vehicles a month when they're in a town of 17,000. And now they're implementing, robo appraisals within those service vans, and empowering those people, as they do with all their associates, with this huge level of trust. And all these things that I would think are crazy or couldn't be done. I mean, I took my Bronco there, and my oil was changed in 25 minutes, not 60 minutes, which a lot of people think is an unattainable deal. While I was literally still at the checkout counter, I walked over and was checking out a couple things with Ed Roberts there. And
Yeah.
next thing you know, I see my truck being pulled around, and I thought it was getting pulled in, but it was already done. And it's because everybody knows exactly what to do. There's total role clarity, and that standard is the standard, and it can be done, which allows them to do that much more business because they're not, clogged up and doing the same work.
Of course.
So that throughput and velocity is, yeah, there's amazing examples all over the country like that blow my mind all the time.
Well, and the cool thing is that creates advocates, which is different than retention. And I just as an industry, I don't think it's a good enough that I don't think it's enough that we just retain our customers because I think, like I said, a large percentage of retention can just come from convenience, right? Like you're
Well, if you don't take care of them, somebody else will. When I say somebody else will, Tesla. And Tesla is going to go and take and now there's so many
Genesis.
people,
Look how they're doing it
right?
too, right?
And now that's the comparison. Like when Lexus came out and they were doing 24-hour roadside assistance, and then they had loaner cars, that immediately became the industry standard. And if you
Of course.
didn't do that, then it was weird. And then anybody who went there, the retention was sky high, because if I go over there, well, you don't do that anymore, or you're not going to give me this. And that's what's going to happen if everybody doesn't pay attention to what Genesis and Tesla and all these disruptors are doing.
No, and look, I think our drive to continue to push, and like I said, I just advocacy is not a word that we typically use in our vertical. It's used in many other verticals. Actually, it's a very common thing. All right, that's
It's a
low.
bad word in our vertical.
And but yeah, but and it's also it's another term that we don't use. We don't use net promoter score in our vertical very much, right? And for anybody out there watching, listening, you don't know what a net promoter score. It's actually a really simplistic question. Would you refer us to a friend or family? Like because really at the end of the day, that's advocacy, right? I mean, dude, I've been both me and
It's
you
the
have been on
ultimate measurement of advocacy.
right? And look, and both of us have been on the marketing side for a long time, right? We neither one of us could ever come up with a campaign in the world, all right, that could generate the business that a single advocate out there can do from just, hey, I got a guy. You need to go see my guy. Hey, I know we're getting towards the tail end of our conversation. I want to give you an opportunity to kind of throw some final thoughts out there before we kind of say our last words. What do you have to kind of say for just kind of final thoughts on everything we've been talking about.
The only thing I would say is that we're in a time of great innovation, and there's so much technology is changing so rapidly and so fast
Mhm.
that you can get sucked into the technology and think that AI is going to automate your follow up and it's going to do everything for everyone. I think that everybody needs to know that training has never been more important with how you're going to interact with people for when that volley comes back and that response comes out of the AI engine and the customer actually has a question that the AI is not equipped to answer, and you've got to jump in. I think a lot of dealers aren't that I work with are relying too much on the AI and they're not working on the handoff and what to do once the receiver gets the ball. How do you run down the field with it? So I think that everybody needs to really pay attention to that and be intentional, authentic, genuine, sincere, because nobody has time to deal with a lot of the stuff that the way things used to be.
Well, like I said, it's those little things. Those little things make huge, huge difference. It's the little things in our people. It's the little things in our process, and it's those little things in those technologies, right? Hey, Brian, for like the 5 people out there that aren't connected with you, what, what for anybody out there watching and listening to this, who would love to connect with you and maybe even continue some of the conversation that we had today, what's the best way to do so?
You can reach out to me on LinkedIn under Brian Kramer, YouTube. My handle is Brian Kramer, Facebook, TikTok, or just email me at bkramer@cars.com.
Awesome. Hey, man, thank you so much for taking the time to jam with me. Hey, if everybody out there is watching this, if you like
They're watching it live,
they're
baby.
watching it live. They're watching it live. Here's the biggest compliment you can give to myself or Brian. Share the show. All right. Hit that share button. Send it to a friend that might get some value out of this. It is literally the best compliment you can ever give one of us content creators out there. Everyone, thank you so much for your time today. Brian, thank you again for hanging out with me, man. This has been a blast. You guys have yourself an amazing day.
Thank you, Jason.